Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So, taking a continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. More importantly this evening, Taki Udon's clone boards, because a lot more details have come out today. Some of them extremely intriguing, like the fact that the actual flagship console may in fact be a video scaler as well. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But there's been a lot of new details released today and they are very intriguing, so we're going to go over each and every one of them. Taki Udon said some other good news for Friday and posted 2 photographs. Now at face value they might be a little bit hard to interpret, but I'm going to go over what they're showing and what that potentially means. You're going to see here there's an HDMI in as well as a VGA in and an HDMI out and a VGA out. Obviously the outs are going to be to get the MiSTer DE10 Nano signal to a television, but why are there HDMI ins here? That is very interesting. What it's saying is this is going to allow you to put a video signal in either analog or HDMI and do something with it. And if that doesn't sound at all familiar, that's what the RetroTink 4K is doing. You have an HDMI in input on the back as well as that VGA style connector and a ton of other analog sources, but the VGA connector can basically take any signal you want. Additionally, something like the PixelFX Morph 4K also has an HDMI in the back, and generally there'd be no reason whatsoever to put a video signal in unless you planned on doing something with it. Whether it's the RetroTink 4K or the Morph 4K, putting video signals in that aren't 4K generally leads to a 4K output, so it's going to be really interesting to see what's going on here. That doesn't mean that this would be a 4K scaler, it could be a 1080p scaler, something like the OSSC or the Tink 5X, but it's very intriguing as to understanding why these actual inputs are on the back. You're also going to see it's a little bit hard to tell, but that's a brightness minimum and max knob as well as a volume minimum and max and an auxiliary audio input as well. So obviously this thing is definitely going to be accepting video signals in and doing something with them, and it's going to be really interesting to see in the future what exactly that is, but it obviously seems to be leaning towards scalar territory. So this thing is both a flagship MiSTer FPGA console as well as a video scaler. That would be pretty damn outstanding. And someone said, oh, this won't be cheap, lol. And then Taki said the MSRP for each MiSTer product in this line is less than the cost of the DE10 Nano. Now if we take that at face value and read it the way I think we're supposed to be reading it, is even the flagship console is going to be cheaper than a DE10 board purchased from Terasic. That's how I'm interpreting it, and I can't see any other way to basically understand how that statement would be understood. So it seems like what Taki is saying is through the entire product line, there will not be one product that costs more than buying a DE10 board at retail from Terasic, Mouser, or somebody like DigiKey. So what exactly is that price? Well, if we take a look right now, they are in stock on Terasic's website, and sometimes you can get that academic discount at $190, but we're going to go for the price of $225. The way I'm understanding is the flagship device is going to be underneath $225 shipped. Now I could be reading this wrong, but I really don't think I am. So it seems to be that a flagship MiSTer console could be coming out that could also be a video scaler that could be retailing under $225. That would be an insane price to hit. Now on the handheld side of things, Taki was showing off some prototypes and talking about AMOLED screens as well. And if you take a look at this video showing a handheld, there's one very telltale clue here that I found very interesting. If you take a look at the bottom right hand side of the video, you're going to see the X and Y buttons are located underneath the screen. That to me says a vertical orientation, something like the analog pocket. Now these could just be prototypes, and it's very possible there's more than one, or the final one will be in a horizontal form factor, but you don't usually have the buttons under the screen unless you have that vertical setup like the analog pocket or a Game Boy or Game Boy Color. So if you're thinking the original Game Boy Advance that had that horizontal setup, that doesn't seem to be what we're seeing here. But I'm also slightly confused, wondering if maybe these are just different prototypes that he's mocking up, because when we talked about the handheld last time, he showed some of the triggers that didn't really seem like they would fit on something like this. Because if we take a look in a moment, you'll understand more, and you'll see here that it has moved over to the AMOLED screen, and he's talking about that being better for aspect ratios of the different devices and cores that are on here. Now I'm assuming this is going to be a 4:3 or very close screen, so the games that do support 16:9 widescreen on something like MiSTer FPGA, the Nintendo 64 cores of the world out there, you might be playing them in letterbox if you want to actually do widescreen, which is totally fine. Widescreen in this generation was kind of just a fun way to play around with a new image and definitely doesn't seem essential. I'd rather have more of a 4:3 or close to aspect ratio than I would a 16:9 screen and have to play with the pillar boxes on the left and right hand side of the screen for all of the games that work in 4x3, which is like 98% of the entirety of the MiSTer FPGA ecosystem cores wise. Sure, you can play golf on Sega Saturn in 16:9 and it is a fun party trick, but honestly it really isn't something that would be necessary, so I do hope that the screen goes to close to a 4x3 aspect ratio. And again, with this horizontal layout, it's a little bit confusing to me, because when Taki started showing off the handheld and some of the triggers there, it definitely looked more like it would be a horizontal Game Boy Advance style. That's still possible, but it is just food for thought. Now moving over to the actual DE10 clone in and of itself, this is an unpopulated PCB that is ready to go to get its surface mount components popped in, and that big area in the middle, that square with all the ball grid array pads, would be where the Altera CPU and FPGA combo chip would in fact go. And if you're not familiar with what these boards look like with no chips on them, this is basically the PCB laid up and designed with all of its traces and components just not yet installed. This is what a PCB looks like before you get all of the components on top. And if this still really isn't clear to you, this is what the DE10 board looks like, and there's that Altera Cyclone 5 system on a chip with the FPGA in the middle. If I take this image and then I put that over the top, you're going to see that basically all of the components line up. Now I will go to like 30% opacity on this, and you can see they fade in. Obviously the photograph is at a different angle, but this is what you're looking at when you're looking at this unpopulated PCB. So if you're wondering how that's going, it looks like it's ready to get its components popped on and go to more testing. And of course, like I showed in the last video, they're still talking about the budget console as well as the mainstream console and the handheld. So there's so many different SKUs in here. We've got a clone DE10 Nano, we've got a budget console, we've got a mainstream console, we have a flagship console, and we have at least one handheld. That's 5 different SKUs, 5 different products across the MiSTer FPGA ecosystem. So we have the budget, obviously, then that still seems to be fully featured. There was a question of whether or not it would run all cores, and they talked about a single system on this one, so that's still to be seen. On the mainstream side of things, this would basically just be your MiSTer FPGA triple stack, except in a different configuration, where you have your HDMI, you have your analog signals, your Ethernet, your power, all the things you're used to on MiSTer FPGA, just in a different case. But again, this is where the real interest comes from in this update. I can't think of any other reason you would put video signals into a device unless you were doing something with those video signals and then outputting them. Now my guess is, and I am guessing here, is that this device can function as a MiSTer FPGA or it can function as a video scaler. Because MiSTer FPGA and the DE10 Nano chip, getting above 10K out is going to be kind of difficult on the hardware. And obviously with all the analog signals we have and the varieties there, getting those out is totally easy as well. So putting an analog signal in or putting an HDMI signal in makes me think it's going to be scaled to at least 1080, maybe 4K, and then output the same way the RetroTink and the PixelFX Morph 4K do the same thing. Time will have to tell. When we get more updates, I will definitely give them to you, but this is getting very intriguing. Now that we're getting details on the flagship console, it really does seem to be a video scaler as well, and if they can do that all for underneath the price of a DE10 Nano board from Terasic, sign me up. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.